The Battle of Britain, July 10th to October 31st, 1940, was a pivotal World War II campaign in which the Royal Air Force, RAF, defended the United Kingdom against extensive bombing by Nazi Germany's Luftwaffe. This marked the first major military campaign fought entirely by air forces. Hi there, I'm Kyle, the host of History of Human Evolution, with a PhD in history and a love for storytelling. I'm here to guide you through the fascinating journey of our species. If you like to explore the past, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share your thoughts below. In the summer of 1940, with France defeated and continental Europe under Nazi control, Britain stood as the last significant opposition to Hitler's ambitions in the West. The Wehrmacht had swept through the Low Countries and overwhelmed French defenses in a matter of weeks. Now, across the English Channel, the Third Reich turned its attention to the British Isles. Hitler's objective was to compel the United Kingdom to accept peace terms, or, failing that, prepare the ground for a full-scale invasion, codenamed Operation Sea Lion. But Hitler and his high command understood that any amphibious landing required control of the air. The Royal Navy, dominant on the seas, could not be neutralized unless the Luftwaffe first established air superiority over southern England. Göring, commander-in-chief of the Luftwaffe, assured Hitler that his forces could eliminate the RAF within weeks. The German strategy, therefore, rested on an aerial campaign designed to degrade British fighter strength, cripple airfield infrastructure, and destroy aircraft production capability. Once the RAF was neutralized, German bombers and transport aircraft could operate freely to support a cross-channel invasion. The British, under Prime Minister Winston Churchill and the command of Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, recognized the existential nature of the threat. The defense of the nation would not be fought on the beaches or in the fields, not yet, but in the skies. Britain's fighter command was reorganized into 4 groups, each tasked with defending a section of the country. This structure, combined with the world's first integrated air defense system, linking radar, ground observers, and centralized command centers, gave the RAF a fighting chance against a numerically superior foe. Thus, the stage was set for a confrontation that would unfold not through conventional land battles, but through attritional air combat and strategic bombardment. For the first time in modern warfare, a campaign would be decided by control of the skies alone. The Battle of Britain unfolded in distinct phases, each reflecting the shifting calculations and frustrations of the German High Command. The opening stage began on July 10, 1940, with what the RAF later designated as the official start of the battle. German forces launched attacks primarily against convoys in the English Channel and ports along the southern coast. This phase, often termed the Kanalkampf, was designed to provoke a response from fighter command, forcing the RAF to engage under disadvantageous conditions. Losses were relatively limited, but this period served as a prelude, a testing ground for tactics, pilot capabilities, and the performance of aircraft. By August 13th, the Luftwaffe initiated Adlerangriff, or Eagle attack, marking the second phase. Now the full weight of the German aerial campaign was directed at RAF airfields, radar stations, and sector stations across southern England. This was the most critical period for fighter command. German bombers, escorted by Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Bf-110s, targeted forward operating bases and command infrastructure. Several RAF stations were badly damaged, particularly in Kent and Sussex, and the strain on pilots, mechanics, and radar operators reached unsustainable levels. Nevertheless, the air defense system, Dowding's integrated structure, held together. Despite Göring's optimism, RAF resistance did not wane as expected. Then, on September 7th, a dramatic shift occurred. Following a retaliatory British bombing raid on Berlin, Hitler ordered a change in focus. The Luftwaffe redirected its efforts away from airfields and onto London and other major cities, inaugurating what became known as the Blitz. This phase was politically driven, designed to terrorize the British population and crush morale. Yet militarily, it was a grave error. Fighter command, no longer under immediate threat, regrouped. Airfields were repaired, aircraft production continued, and pilot training accelerated. While civilian casualties in the cities soared, the RAF regained operational effectiveness. As autumn approached, the tempo of the air battle slowed. The Luftwaffe extended its range to northern cities, such as Liverpool and Manchester, but the damage to Britain's air defenses had already been mitigated. Moreover, daylight raids grew increasingly costly for German bomber crews. By late October, the Luftwaffe had effectively abandoned daylight operations and shifted to night bombing. Each phase of the battle reflected both operational pressures and political motives, but collectively they revealed the limitations of air power when divorced from coherent strategic discipline. Several decisive factors underpinned Britain's ability to withstand the Luftwaffe's assault, none more significant than the integration of technology, infrastructure, and leadership. At the heart of the defense was radar, known at the time as radio direction finding. The British chain-home radar network, operational before the war began, provided early warning of incoming raids from across the Channel. This allowed Fighter Command to direct its limited number of squadrons precisely where they were needed, conserving strength and maximizing impact. Radar alone, however, was not sufficient. It was the coordination between radar stations, the observer corps, and the sector control rooms that created the world's first fully integrated air defense system. Information flowed rapidly from detection to interception, enabling real-time decision-making in the face of massive air raids. Leadership and organization played a vital role. Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, head of Fighter Command, resisted political pressure for offensive operations over France and preserved fighter strength for the defense of British airspace. His methodical approach, rooted in careful allocation of resources and minimal pilot attrition, was often criticized during the campaign, but ultimately vindicated. Under his direction, Fighter Command was divided into regional groups, such as Keith Park's No. 11 Group in the southeast, which allowed for localized responses under a unified strategic vision. Aircraft performance also mattered. The RAF's frontline fighters, the Hawker Hurricane and the Supermarine Spitfire, each served distinct purposes. The Hurricane, rugged and stable, was responsible for the bulk of bomber interceptions, while the Spitfire, faster and more agile, was generally tasked with engaging German fighters. Though numerically inferior, the RAF's technical parity, if not superiority, in aircraft design neutralized the Luftwaffe's numerical advantage. The contribution of personnel cannot be overstated. The pilots of Fighter Command, including volunteers from Poland, Czechoslovakia, Canada, New Zealand, and other nations, fought under immense psychological and physical pressure. Despite heavy casualties, replacements were trained and deployed with remarkable speed, sustained by a national effort that extended beyond the cockpit. Ground crews, radar operators, and auxiliary personnel worked around the clock to keep squadrons in the air. Finally, home advantage played a subtle but constant role. British pilots who bailed out over their own territory could return to duty within hours or days, while German pilots, if not killed or captured, were lost to their units. Likewise, damaged British aircraft often landed safely and were quickly repaired, while German losses over enemy territory were unrecoverable. In a war of attrition fought so close to home, this asymmetry proved decisive. By late October 1940, the Luftwaffe had failed to achieve its principal objective, the destruction of RAF Fighter Command. Despite inflicting significant damage and suffering heavy losses themselves, the Germans could not break British aerial resistance. With the onset of autumn and worsening weather, Hitler indefinitely postponed Operation Sea Lion. The threat of a German invasion, imminent for months, evaporated. The outcome of the Battle of Britain marked the first major strategic defeat for Nazi Germany. It demonstrated, both to the world and to the German High Command, that the Wehrmacht was not invincible. The myth of Blitzkrieg as an unstoppable force had met its limits in British skies. For the first time, Hitler's plans had been derailed, not by overwhelming force, but by coordinated defense, technological foresight, and national resilience. The significance of the battle extended far beyond the immediate military situation. It denied Germany control of the Channel and ensured that Britain would remain a base for Allied resistance, a staging ground for future operations, and a beacon of defiance across occupied Europe. Politically, it emboldened the British government and solidified Winston Churchill's leadership. Internationally, it played a crucial role in influencing American public opinion, demonstrating that Britain could and would fight on. Moreover, the battle reshaped military thinking. It underscored the strategic value of air superiority, validating the concept of independent air forces as decisive instruments of national defense. The integrated air defense system, with radar at its core, became a model studied and emulated in conflicts to come. Though Britain remained under aerial bombardment throughout the Blitz, the survival of fighter command ensured the survival of Britain itself. The Luftwaffe's inability to gain control of the skies marked a critical turning point in the war, strategically, symbolically, and psychologically. The human and material cost of the Battle of Britain was considerable on both sides, though it fell most heavily on the Luftwaffe. Over the course of the campaign, the Germans lost approximately 1,733 aircraft, including hundreds of bombers and their escort fighters. These losses were particularly acute among bomber crews, whose slow and vulnerable aircraft became targets for RAF interceptors once the Luftwaffe's initial hopes for fighter dominance faded. The attrition extended to manpower. Over 2,500 German aircrew were killed or captured, many of whom had been seasoned veterans from earlier campaigns in Poland and France. For Britain, the price was severe but comparatively more sustainable. RAF Fighter Command lost around 915 aircraft, primarily Hurricanes and Spitfires. The cost in lives was substantial. 544 RAF pilots were killed, a figure that does not account for the thousands more who were wounded, captured, or psychologically affected by the strain of continual combat. Ground crews also faced casualties, particularly during raids on airfields and sector stations, though their losses are less frequently documented in the historiography. Civilian casualties were significant. As the Luftwaffe shifted its attacks from military targets to urban centers, especially during the early stages of the Blitz in September, the British public bore the brunt of the campaign. Over 23,000 civilians were killed and many more injured, primarily in London, Liverpool, and other industrial cities. Entire neighborhoods were leveled, and the psychological toll on the population was immense, though the intended collapse in morale never materialized. Material losses on the British side were partially mitigated by the proximity of the battle to home airfields and manufacturing centers. Aircraft could often be recovered, repaired, and returned to service in a matter of days. For Germany, by contrast, every plane lost over England was a total loss, either destroyed, captured, or unrecoverable. The logistical strain of replacing aircraft and trained personnel grew increasingly burdensome for the Luftwaffe in the months that followed. In purely quantitative terms, the Luftwaffe committed greater numbers to the campaign and suffered proportionately higher losses. But the strategic implications of these figures extended far beyond the ledger. The Luftwaffe's failure to suppress British air power not only cost it aircraft and lives, but also its credibility as a decisive arm of the German military. The cultural impact of the Battle of Britain was immediate, profound, and enduring. It became a defining moment in British national identity, mythologized almost as soon as it ended. Central to this construction was Winston Churchill's speech to Parliament on August 20, 1940, in which he famously declared, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." The phrase "the few" entered the national lexicon as a term of reverence for RAF fighter pilots, casting them as the embodiment of sacrifice, courage, and defiance. In literature, newspapers, posters, and radio broadcasts, the battle was portrayed as a civilizational stand against tyranny. The image of young men scrambling to their aircraft from grass airfields, standing alone against the might of Nazi Germany, became a central motif in wartime propaganda. It was not merely a military victory, it was moral, heroic, and deeply personal. This symbolism served to unify a nation under siege and offered reassurance during the long and uncertain months that followed. The battle also reinforced Britain's self-conception as an island fortress, protected not by walls, but by its pilots and the skies above. The phrase "the few" obscured the contributions of thousands of others: ground crews, radar operators, women in the auxiliary services, but the narrative proved durable. Over time, the battle became less a military episode and more a foundational myth, a story of national survival built on resilience and technological ingenuity. Cinematically, the Battle of Britain has been revisited in films such as The Battle of Britain, 1969, which cemented the visual grammar of the conflict. Dogfights against clouded skies, burning cities, the solitary figure watching the horizon. Music, memorials, and annual commemorations, including Battle of Britain Day on September 15th, have kept its memory active in public consciousness. Statues of pilots, etched walls of names, and preserved airfields now serve as sites of reflection and homage. Yet the cultural legacy extends beyond Britain. For occupied nations like Poland and Czechoslovakia, whose pilots flew alongside the RAF, the battle symbolized both exile and resistance. Their presence is increasingly recognized in modern scholarship and commemoration, broadening the narrative beyond the confines of national memory. In the decades since, historians have revisited the mythology, questioning its exclusions and complexities, yet its emotional power remains. The Battle of Britain occupies a unique space in 20th century memory, a rare instance where strategic defense, mass mobilization, and symbolic clarity aligned in the imagination of a people. We'd love to hear your thoughts on possible future topics. What areas of human evolution would you like to explore next? Leave your suggestions in the comments, and let's keep the conversation going. As always, our references and further reading are listed in the description below if you'd like to dive deeper into the subject. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.